ChatGPT is blowing up and it is set to revolutionize many areas of human activities. It already has a lot of practical applications, starting with researching information, rewriting phrases, and effectively editing your written material, generating bland, uninspired generic texts like screenplays for top 10 lists on mojo.com. Lots of stuff. It is evolving, and in many ways, we're witnessing the rise of the new and advanced generation of search engines, the new Google, if you will. Let's try to talk to this new AI about the history of ancient Rome and of ancient Greece a little bit. So we could, first of all, have some fun, and more importantly, to figure out the current state of ChatGPT, its applications in this field of studies, its problems, and there are lots of them, some are quite sinister. And, to have a taste of things to come. Obviously, keep in mind that ChatGPT is rapidly evolving, and sometimes you can have a very different answer to a question you asked a month ago. Since we're trying to figure out how ChatGPT can be of help with our pursuit of historical knowledge, we'll start with the historical sources, as you do. And obviously, we'll try to challenge the AI a little bit. Give me a list of primary sources on the reign of Diocletian. A question that makes grown men cry. Okay, Diocletian was a blah, 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 who ruled. Okay, Historia Augusta. Interesting. Life of Diocletian by Eutropius. There is no such thing. Epitome de Caesaribus. Okay. Panegyricum Latini. Historia Nova. Chronicles of Dionysius of Tel Mare, and the Chronicon Pascale. That's okay. That's interesting. What is the definition of a primary source? A primary source is a piece of information or data that was created or produced during the time period being studied, or by someone who was directly involved in the events or circumstances being researched. It is considered to be original and directly reflects the thoughts, experiences, opinions, and observations of its creator. Yeah. Primary sources can take many forms, including written texts such as letters, journals, and government documents, as well as visual and audio materials, and so on. Yeah. Let's take a look at this list. Okay, like Byzantine Historia Nova. Can the Byzantine Historia Nova be considered a primary source on the reign of Diocletian? Yes, the Byzantine Historia Nova can be considered a primary source. Tell me more. It was written by an anonymous Byzantine author. Yeah, Zosimus, very anonymous. But that's an interesting interpretation. Yeah, in the late antique period. Like 200 years after the death of Diocletian. That's one hell of a primary source, really. Let's get back to this hilarious list one more time. So, Historia Augusta, Life of Diocletian by Eutropius. That's interesting. I have a question. Yeah, I really have a question. So, what is the Life of Diocletian by Eutropius? The Life of Diocletian by Eutropius is a historical work that provides an account of the reign of Diocletian, who ruled blah blah blah. The author Eutropius was a 4th century Roman historian. That's kind of interesting, but there's no such thing. Is the Life of Diocletian by Eutropius a part of Breviarium of Eutropius? Yes, the Life of Diocletian by Eutropius is a part of the Breviarium of Eutropius. If you don't know, we are talking about basically a very, very small section in the abridgment of the Roman history. But let me clarify one more thing. ChatGPT lists Eutropius as one of the sources on the persecutions of Christians. So, does the Life of Diocletian by Eutropius mention persecution of Christians? Yes, the Life of Diocletian by Eutropius mentions the persecution of Christians during Diocletian's reign. Wonderful. Can you give me a quote where persecutions of Christians are mentioned? Unfortunately, I don't have the exact text of the Life of Diocletian at my disposal. But I do, and these persecutions of Christians are not there. Okay, we're talking about Christianity too much. But since we are on this subject, are the persecution of Christians under Diocletian mentioned in non Christian sources? Yes, really. The persecution of Christians under Diocletian is mentioned in several non Christian sources. For example, the historian Eusebius. You're kidding me right now. Eusebius, really? Ecclesiastical history. Non Christian source. Great. Similarly, the Roman historian Lactantius. Great, Lactantius. That's great. In addition to these Christian sources. Oh, now he's admitting that these sources are actually Christian. Several non Christian sources also mention the persecution of Christians. For example, the Roman historian Eutropius provides a brief account. That's not true. While the historian Ammianus Marcellinus, really, Ammianus Marcellinus, it's not there. No, seriously, the surviving part of his work starts with like Constantius II. Diocletian is mentioned numerous times, but nothing about persecution, just nothing. Let's finish this. Give me a joke about Diocletian and a cabbage. Sure, here's a joke about Diocletian and a cabbage. Why did Diocletian take a cabbage to bed with him every night? Because he heard it was good for his dynasty. Wow. Actually, I have one more question. Compare the reign of Diocletian with Biden's presidency. The reign of Diocletian and the presidency are two different historical events and cannot be easily compared. Great. The reason I've asked this stupid question is only a couple of weeks ago, ChatGPT frequently refused to answer anything that involved modern politicians, especially American politicians. Now it's evolving. Previously, the exact same question was ignored because it might be perceived as offensive or something like partisan. Let's try another request that ChatGPT ignored a few weeks ago. Tell me a story about Septimius Severus traveling in a time machine to the year 1995 to marry Vanilla Ice. Oh, it works. I'm not gonna read this. This is not a funny story. But yeah, this kind of a request was impossible earlier and was considered offensive since it included quote unquote historical characters. I had to replace Vanilla Ice with a potato. Seriously, a potato. And then ChatGPT agreed to proceed with the story. Now you don't have to use the potato workaround. Okay, back to Christians. No, I'm not obsessed with Christians. I'm obsessed with the sources. That's why I'm doing this. Kind of. Write an article advancing the idea that Constantine the Great wasn't a Christian. Constantine the Great is widely known as the first Roman emperor to convert to Christianity. Okay. He is often credited with bringing an end to the persecution of Christians and laying the foundation for the spread of Christianity throughout the empire. However, recent historical research and analysis of the available evidence suggests that Constantine might not have been a genuine convert to Christianity. So we are discussing this trope of, well, he probably wasn't sincere, and I meant something different. Well, it is good that ChatGPT learned to say anything coherent on the subject. That wasn't the case a couple of weeks ago. Let's rephrase our question. Write an article advancing the idea that Constantine the Great never converted to Christianity. Constantine the Great, who ruled the Roman Empire, blah blah blah. However, there is growing evidence to suggest may not have actually converted to Christianity at all. Okay, one of the main arguments is the fact that he continued to perform. Okay. Additionally, there is a lack of concrete evidence to support the idea that Constantine converted to Christianity. There are no surviving records or accounts of his baptism or any other formal act of conversion. That's better, but I'm not convinced. What are the primary sources on Constantine's reign? Primary sources on Constantine the Great's reign include contemporary writings, really, and accounts produced during or shortly after his rule. Okay, the writings of Eusebius, oh yeah, letters of Constantine, the edicts of Constantine, the Council of Nicaea, oh come on, really, the Arch of Constantine, the writings of Lactantius. Why non Christian authors don't mention Constantine's conversion to Christianity? There are several reasons why non Christian authors of the time do not mention Constantine's conversion to Christianity. Lack of interest. Yeah, I've heard this one. The conversion of an individual emperor may not have been seen as significant enough, really. Prejudice. Non Christian authors of the time may have held them. Yeah. Lack of reliable information. The conversion of Constantine may not have been widely known. Focus on different themes. It's like you're talking to a 5-year-old. Okay, let's proceed with our slightly revisionistic source criticism. What are the arguments of John Wilson Ross regarding the authenticity of works by Tacitus? John Wilson Ross was a 19th century British scholar who wrote about the authenticity of works by Tacitus. Yes. Ross was an advocate of the traditional view and not really. Ross argued that Tacitus's works are of consistent style and display a high level of historical accuracy, which supports their authenticity. Ross also dismissed claims of interpolation. Overall, Ross maintained that the works of Tacitus are genuine and represent an important source of information about ancient Rome and its history. Okay. What about his book Tacitus and Bracciolini, the annals forged in the 15th century? John Wilson Ross wrote the book Tacitus and Bracciolini, in which he challenged the idea that the annals, a major historical work, were a forgery created in the 15th century. This idea was popular among some scholars in the 19th century and was based on the notion that the annals showed signs of a modern style and perspective that was inconsistent with the ancient world. Well, not only that, actually. In his book, Ross argued against this idea. No, he didn't. It's actually called The Annals Forged in the 15th Century. It's without, question mark. He pointed to the consistent style and historical accuracy. No, he didn't. Ross's book was an important contribution to the study of Tacitus and helped to reaffirm the traditional view that the Annals are authentic works by the historical Tacitus. That's a lie. I want to make a video for my second channel about Arthur Evans and his reconstruction of Palace of Knossos. I think ChatGPT might help me to write a good script. Let's go. Was Arthur Evans a British spy? Arthur Evans was not a British spy. Widely regarded as one of the founders of Minoan archaeology. Okay. Let's rephrase this. Why Austro-Hungarian authorities wanted to deport him from Bosnia? Arthur Evans was not deported from Bosnia by the Austro-Hungarian authorities. Arthur Evans was a British archaeologist. He was not involved in any activities in Bosnia that would have caused the Austro-Hungarian authorities to deport him. Really? Even Wikipedia knows a couple of things about this. What Arthur Evans was doing in Bosnia? Arthur Evans did not have any known direct involvement in Bosnia. Oh, come on. His main area of focus was classical archaeology. He did not conduct any excavations or have any known activities in Bosnia. When Arthur Evans transferred the ownership of Knossos. Arthur Evans transferred the ownership of the site of Knossos in Crete to the British School at Athens in 1901. No, it happened like 2 decades later under very interesting circumstances. Let's ask a question about the circumstances. When Arthur Evans was arrested for violating public decency with a 17-year-old boy. Yeah, here we go. This content may violate our content policy. I'm sorry, but I couldn't find any information to support this claim about Arthur Evans. So, apparently, if you want to write an article about Evans using ChatGPT, it's going to be worse than a straightforward retelling of the Wikipedia page. I guess that's enough for today. The practical applications of ChatGPT are quite self evident. You've heard about it a million times. People even train it to help writing books. But I tried to do something a little bit different. So, this is how the research for information on antiquity currently looks like. It can be helpful as well, but you've seen some of the problems we encounter. You have a surface level type of information, which is quite frequently simply not accurate. Lots of lazy history students are probably writing essays or something on the range of subjects in the field using ChatGPT. And quite probably they can get away with it, especially if we're talking about schools, where any kind of work that conforms with the books is okay, especially since the books intended for school education quite frequently contradict even the consensus of the academia. Apart from that, you can easily see the possible problems with a restriction of information on quote unquote sensitive or potentially offensive subjects. So your results will always be censored, and your requests are obviously monitored, which is the new normal of our age. We'll see how ChatGPT and other comparable solutions will evolve quite soon. And if you're watching this from the future, you already know everything and you have a lot of fun watching how weird it all was in the beginning.